What's up, guys? Hope you had a great weekend. What a race. Wow. The Brazilian Grand Prix rarely fails to deliver something spectacular, and this weekend, my goodness, you cannot fail but to have loved that race. It was brilliant. It had everything. Fisticuffs almost. It had action and controversy on track. It had some great racing. It had, some of the favourites really struggling. Underdogs making their way through the field. Just a bit of all sorts. I loved it, and as predicted, as it always does, it's provoked a number of great questions from you lot, so thank you very much. Let's get into those. Roll the sting! Right, so much to talk about today, so many incidents, so many questions. Let's start with the big, obvious ones perhaps, the incident between Ocon and Verstappen. Let's start there because Rich John asks, and he says this: "Hi Mark, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but don't you find it slightly suspicious that the one car that takes out the leader and hands the win to Mercedes yesterday is managed by Toto and expects to be in that car in a year's time?" Right, now that was a question that was raised, or a theory that was raised by Helmut Marko as well, that it might have all been premeditated. I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. I think that, Ocon was in that situation because of a slow pit stop. That's the first thing. So he would have never been in that situation had they not had a very unpredictable slow pit stop on Ocon's car. Then when he came out on fresh tyres at that stage in the race, the pace advantage that Ocon had was extraordinary compared to Max Verstappen on his old tyres, trying to manage his car through the race lead to get to the end of the Grand Prix. Ocon was on a completely different race strategy at that point. So the pace advantage is massive. You are absolutely allowed to unlap yourself. And so first of all, to answer your question, Rich John, and he goes on to say, doesn't this have shades of Nelson Piquet Jr. about it? He knows the rules, you don't interfere with the leader, he's not an amateur. Isn't this why drivers shouldn't be managed by another team's boss? Right, I don't think so. I don't buy that at all. I don't think it was anything in it other than a misjudgment. And I'm not even, my opinion on this, sorry, my phone's ringing. Right, sorry about that, the phone was ringing downstairs. So I've completely forgotten where I was, but what my point here is that there is no way that Ocon premeditated that incident, or that it was anything to do with the fact that he may be linked to Mercedes or whatever. Don't buy it at all. So no, I'm not in with that conspiracy theory. Now the incident itself, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, because my theory on this is that, and this seems to go against what almost everybody else is saying on social media and even on the TV at the weekend, I'm not buying that that's entirely Esteban Ocon's fault. He came out with such a pace advantage. He's only got a couple of laps in which he can use that pace advantage. What's he expected to do? Just sit behind Max Verstappen going relatively slowly to manage his race and see out the end of the race? No, he's supposed to get past him, to push on, to make use of the strategy that he found himself on. And the fact that, he used that particular part of the track to overtake, maybe he could have used a better point, but perhaps not. That is one of the areas where you get a real big slingshot and that pace advantage can be maximised. So he went around the outside. You're absolutely allowed to unlap yourself. If we look at that incident on its own, if it wasn't the race leader involved, you would say that Ocon had a significant portion of his car alongside Max, and therefore that gives him the right to the inside line at that corner at turn 3, wasn't it? Turn 3, turn 2. The right-hander at the centre S's. Max Verstappen, according to the letter of the law, has to give way to that because he has a significant portion of the Force India alongside the Red Bull. He didn't do that. He didn't give him enough room. He had, the opinion that he's the race leader. There's no one else going to challenge him at that point. And I totally get that opinion. I see that point of view. But if we're going to look at the letter of the law, I'm sorry, that's not just simply Ocon's fault. And even the fact that he got a 10-second stop-go penalty for that, personally I thought was harsh, because those penalties have to be applied to the letter of the law. You can't look at you know, what the results of the incident were, or whether it spoiled the race leader's race as opposed to a backmarker's race. For me, the penalty should be applied according to the letter of the law, and if we'd done that on Sunday, I'm not sure that would have been a penalty for Ocon. Anyway, I know that's going to cause a massive stir, because particularly there's a lot of Dutch fans that watch this particular channel, and I know you'll disagree with that. That's fine, that's what this is all about, having a discussion. Let me know what you think in the comments box, I know you will. So there we go, I thought that was a bit of a 50-50 incident. If you take the incident on its own on the racetrack, 50-50, but the reality is Max had a lot more to lose than Esteban Ocon, and perhaps should have, you know, not taken any risks at that point. Equally, Esteban Ocon knows he's dicing with the race leader, so perhaps he should have been a lot more cautious as well. So both parties had something that they could have done differently to avoid the incident. Right, that is that one done. Now, I better quickly explain what I'm doing. This is Ginger's bedroom, and I better not just stand here chatting constantly, because I've got to, over the course of today, put Ginger's bed back together. This big pile of bits down here, hopefully by the end of this video, will assemble itself into some sort of bed. It's her old bed, we took it apart while we were painting the room. It's got to go back together today. That is my mission. Right, let's get on to the post-race handbags. The next part of this drama. Stefan78 says, is the Verstappen post-race reaction a sign of the 2019 championship going again to Hamilton, whatever Honda delivers? And 2 days of public service, can he fix your lawnmower in one of those days? I'd love him to fix my lawnmower, it'd save me a job. Is it his reaction a sign that the championship could end up going back to Hamilton? I tell you what, Hamilton is very, very quick to pick up on any weaknesses of anybody. We've seen it, haven't we, with Sebastian Vettel. We've seen it with Nico Rosberg. He knows already where Max Verstappen's weaknesses lie, and Lewis Hamilton will be the first one to exploit those if indeed Verstappen is some kind of challenger on the racetrack to him next year. So 100%. What Max Verstappen has done this weekend and on other occasions is show his hand to Lewis Hamilton. And that is not the kind of thing you need to do to a 5-time world champion like Lewis, because he will pick you apart systematically at some point when you start to become a threat to him. I know that will happen, so keep an eye out for it. So whether it will hand the championship back to Hamilton, I don't know. I'm not taking anything away from Max as a driver. He is an unbelievable race driver. The way he managed his tyres and his pace right the way through yesterday's race weekend, in fact the whole weekend, was just sublime. He was brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. His attacking, overtaking moves to get in that position were brilliant. He did everything he needed to do, and it was completely unfortunate that that incident happened and ruined his race. Otherwise we'd be talking about him as the race winner yesterday. So I undoubtedly think he has the talent to take the championship fight to Hamilton or whoever else next year if Honda can deliver. But he has a weakness, and Lewis now knows what it is. Gianni Cipolla, I hope I got that one right, apologies if not. Gianni Cipolla says, now that we saw some pretty weird decisions made by the stewards, is it time to change how penalties are given? Should there be a professional jury that are the same group in every race throughout the season? Right, well, we get this question, don't we, every time there's some kind of incident. We get this every time there's any kind of incident where the stewards might have made what's deemed to be some kind of dodgy or strange decision. Look, I've talked about this before. My feeling is that there should absolutely be at least one person on the stewarding panel that is consistent, that stays at every single Grand Prix to keep some kind of consistency. So he's been involved in every one of the decision-making processes that have happened at each race that season. So yes, I firmly believe that should happen. The decisions that we had this weekend, I've got to say, the one that I've already talked about was, well, I've already talked about it, but there were some others, weren't there, across the course of the weekend, and lots of you have talked about Lewis Hamilton's kind of blocking incident in qualifying. Firstly with Kimi, secondly with Sorokin. it wasn't even referred to the stewards, that particular incident, and for me it definitely should have been. Now I know there are mitigating circumstances, I know that Lewis is relying on information from his team to tell him who's coming up behind him and at what pace, but you know, it's a team game, and between Lewis and the team that information should have been relayed, and Lewis definitely, even once he saw him, should not have veered quickly off the racing line. He should have held his position and allowed the faster car to make his way past. It was very close to a massive incident, and for me, whether it's two guys on an out lap or whether it's destroying an absolute qualifying lap, to me it doesn't matter. The incident could be in Friday practice, it could be on installation lap, it doesn't matter. It came very close to causing a massively dangerous accident, and for me that should be addressed. So that I thought was a bit strange. The Kimi one, I mean, that was on Kimi's fast lap, so you could say it compromised Kimi's lap, even if only a tiny amount. Yeah, I'm surprised that didn't get referred to the stewards. The Sebastian Vettel one, where he went onto the weighing scales. Now, the FIA press release from Joe Bauer said that he destroyed the scales, and I know lots of you have only seen the on-board footage of Sebastian driving onto the scales and then driving off, and it looks really innocuous. In fact, who was it? 1 second. Raz on F1, he says, "Hey brother, watch this and explain why did Vettel get the reprimand and how did he break the weighing scales?" I'm still thinking, it's a joke, he knocked over a cone, I'm confused. Okay, well, I get that, lots of you had that opinion, and from the onboard camera from Vettel's car, it looked like he just knocked the cone, but there is some other footage. I will try and get it and put it into this video. I'm not sure where it is, I saw it over the weekend, somebody sent it to me. There is other footage which shows, I think it's from the crowd in fact, which shows as Sebastian drove off the scales, spun the wheels up and spat the scales out the back. Which firstly damaged the scales, and secondly actually was very dangerous because those scales are heavy, and if you spit those out the back and they hit somebody, that's a dangerous situation. And apart from any of that, he just didn't follow the instructions of the FIA representatives, and that for me is enough to generate a penalty, because if you don't penalise that, well, what's next? Where does it go next? It just continues, doesn't it? So I thought it was right that he got a reprimand. The fines, I mean, the fine is peanuts to him, isn't it? 25,000 euros. So potentially both him and Lewis Hamilton, I thought, could have had, justifiably had grid penalties for Sunday's race, given those incidents that happened on Saturday. But there you go, they didn't, and we know what happened since. Also, got to say, by the way, massive congratulations to Mercedes, Mercedes AMG. Unbelievable achievement. 5 World Championships in a row, double World Championships in a row. To win any World Championship is an indescribably difficult thing to achieve. I mean, so many things have to be perfect, or as close to perfect as they can, to make that happen. And to have that happen 5 years in a row is something we should all be taking our hats off to. Well done to Mercedes. Every single one of you all deserve the accolades you're getting, so congratulations, very, very well played. This year they had a proper tough fight from the opposition outside of their own garage for the first time in a while. And at times Ferrari had the faster car and Mercedes had to dig deep to find pace when they didn't have it at some races, and to understand things that weren't working on their car, and that's what they've been very, very good at. They haven't made too many mistakes, and when they have made mistakes, they have absolutely got away and learned from those. So that's why they won the championship, that's why they deserve to win the championship, and that's why I have absolute maximum respect for you all. Well done. Starting to take shape. Right. Another question. W.M. Ryan says, why do teams like Merck wear through their tyres so quickly while others like Red Bull seem to do so many more laps out of theirs? I'd have guessed something straightforward like downforce, but I expect more downforce to have the opposite results. Right, massive question. I mean, hugely complicated answer. There are so many factors that go into tyre life on any particular car, on any given day, with any given driver, any conditions, so on, so on, so So many things. Downforce is definitely one of those. We know the Red Bull has good levels of downforce. Now, if the car's producing a lot of very efficient high downforce, pushing, so the airflow over the top of the car, pushing the car into the racetrack, generating grip, pushing those tyres into the racetrack, well, the car has more grip without having to rely on, let's say, the more mechanical grip that the chassis might produce. Now, if the car has more downforce, it's less likely to slide around and move around in the corners. The drivers are able to go at an increased speed or a reduced lap time without having to push the car above its limits. And as soon as you do that, you start to overheat tyres, you start to wear through them, you start to create hot spots and blistering. So the downforce of the Red Bull definitely helps in that situation, but the Mercedes is also a high downforce producing car, so that's not the sole factor. There are so many other things about like when that car produces its downforce. The very, very high rake concept of that Red Bull racing car is all designed around giving slow to medium speed downforce as well as maximising the efficiency of that diffuser at high speed. So in the slow to medium corners, when you really need that mechanical grip or the grip from the tyres at slower speeds, if the car's producing more downforce anyway, you're still pushing the car into the surface of the road, stopping those tyres from slipping, essentially giving you more grip. The more grip you've got, the less the tyres slip around, they slide around, the less heat's generated, and so on and so on. There are other factors. One huge factor is the driving style of the driver himself, because the driver is probably the single biggest factor on how the life of any given tyre lasts. So how hard is he pushing it? Where is he pushing it? When is he managing to save those tyres by not pushing so much? And it's all about just backing off tiny amounts, going into corners in the braking zones, just making sure that you're not at the limit so you don't start locking tyres. As soon as you've locked a tyre, you overheat like massively, have a spike in temperature on one particular spot on the tyre. That very quickly, if you can't dissipate that heat, if you go into the next series of corners leaning on that tyre again, you can easily create blistering situations like that. Same on the rear. If you get the power down too quickly, spin the rear wheels up, massively overheat, the temperature spike again goes through the roof, and you create hot spots again. And that's where the blistering, little pockets of the tyre can start to open up because they've essentially just cooked and bubbled up on the surface. So the driver has a huge part to play in just understanding where he can push, how much he can push, being smooth, really, really smooth. You know what it's like out on your road car if you drift out wide. We must have all done it. Come through a corner, you start to drift out wide towards the exit of your corner, towards the curb or towards the white line, just to smooth the corner out. It feels faster, it feels smoother, it feels more efficient than if you hug the inside line and are really leaning on that tyre, asking everything from the tyre. Well, the more you ask from the tyre, the more life you take away from it. And some cars do that better than others. There are things like camber angles, caster angles, how much roll there is in each particular chassis. Because if the car's rolling, it tends to lean on the outside tyre more so than it perhaps would with a stiffer car through certain corner complexes. So a very difficult question to answer. So many factors go into it. But the fact is that the overall concept of that Red Bull seems very, very good at managing particularly the softer end of the tyre range, and that's something that Mercedes haven't been quite so good at. Even Ferrari have been much better at Mercedes. The other major factor here, of course, and we've seen this a number of times in recent races where Lewis hasn't been at the front of the field in clean air, and the difference that makes is that if you're in clear air, you're gaining the maximum downforce your car can achieve because you've got a clear stream of free-flowing air over the bodywork, the aerodynamic surfaces. If you're in the turbulent air, back in second, third or fourth place, which Lewis has been in recent times, or if you're on one of these really sort of tight, compact tracks where you're constantly sort of battling your way through traffic and battling your way through turbulent air, it can have the same effect. You can lose downforce, you start to slide around, you work your tyres harder, and it's knock-on effect that you start to churn through those tyres very quickly. Some cars are more efficient in turbulent air than others. The Mercedes, we know, is particularly inefficient in turbulent air, so suffers to a greater extent. I hope that gives you some idea. I mean, it's a very, very difficult, impossible question to answer in the space of this video. Brilliant. Right, check it out. Pretty much done. Right, one final question because we have rattled on quite a lot today. Let's go with Martin Wildgust. Martin Wildgust says, hi, I was sat here with the family watching the GP in Brazil and was wondering why the Mercedes mechanics wear different colours suits. Some black, some turquoise. Good question. I've been asked this before by other people, so it's a good one to finish on. The simple reason is that they put certain people in certain positions around the car in a different coloured suit, so they're instantly recognisable. Normally it's the front jack man, the rear jack man, and then normally what used to be the lollipop man, or the man that's controlling the traffic light system. Just because they are key important people around the car that everyone else around the car needs to be able to see very quickly and distinguish between, because they're the guys who are eventually going to drop the car on the floor, don't forget. So they are the ones that the traffic light man needs to be able to see very, very recognisably, very quickly, so they can see that their job is done, that all the wheels are tight and the front jack and rear jack man are happy and have been able to drop the car. I know they have a light system to do all that, but as a visual reference, that's why they're wearing different suits. Just makes it a little bit easier. It's also a nice reference for the driver to come in aiming at that front jack man. Poor guy. Right, let's call it a day for this week. Loads of questions. I'm sorry I didn't get through too many today, but there were so many big discussions that I think some of them took up a bit longer than others. But keep them coming, keep firing them in. Pop more in the comments to this video. Please do give me your opinions on all of the controversial subjects. The Max Verstappen versus Esteban Ocon crash and then bash in the weighing scales, the whole stewards decisions around that, and the Sebastian Vettel Lewis Hamilton decisions from Saturday. So many things to talk about. Please let me know all of your thoughts and opinions on anything that's happened in this video, anything you'd love to see in future videos, and I'll see you tomorrow.